All right, so here we are in beautiful Baja, enjoying this fantastic weather. And, you know, I like to join our fellows, like Gabe here, who founded this incredible club. We go out and boogie board, and we enjoy this incredible beach here and just the beauty that Earth's all about. And I get so inspired that I was singing, "Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a wonderful feeling. Everything's going my way." Now this verse is new. The waves o'er the ocean are flowing. O'er them the boogiers are going. The dolphins leap high as an elephant's eye. And the seagulls are flying right up to the sky. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a wonderful feeling. Everything's going my way. All right, thank you. Well, that inspiration, that everything's going my way. It's incredible what this community has done, and the things that seemed impossible that became possible through the magic of Rotary. That was why Stephanie Ertzig named that theme. She said that there was a remote village where they had dirty water, and Rotary helped install the filter for the water. And when the kids saw this muddy, dirty water come in and clean water come up, they said, "Can you do that magic again?" It's magic. It is magic. And it is magic what this community has done. You know, when Molly and I first moved to this community, there was no regard for education in the schools. If there wasn't even a high school here. If kids could make it through the 6th grade before they were supposed to require it, but they couldn't even do that. They didn't have money for uniforms, shoes, whatever. Uniforms were required. They didn't have money for books. So local people got together. Later, many became part of this Rotary Club and began to raise money for Becca scholarships. And we had wonderful events. Some of you came to the recent Fandango. And as a result of this kind of work, first of all, over 50 students from our community here have now graduated from university. They're becoming
100.
Over 100. My wife corrects me. Over 100 have graduated from universities and colleges where there was no hope of that. And the attitude toward education has completely changed. We've got a huge engagement of so many. You want to drop? So many students are now. The parents come to the PTA meetings more than any, and we've got the highest rate throughout Baja of any community in the number of kids that both graduate from high school. Almost everyone that graduates from high school applies to the college and university, and the highest rate, the highest score is highest in almost every measure. Now this is kind of part of the magic of what Rotary is. It's local communities doing things that transform our community. Well, right now, we face a very arduous task. I'm going to share screens a minute over here. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to share screens and show you. Here we are. All right. Okay. So, on the left, you see a quote from Paul Harris, the founder of Rotary. And on the other side, you see something we've been doing, these mega meetings that I'll get to a little later in this talk. Now, the Rotary founder, Paul Harris, who created this whole thing, he said, the years ahead, and this was back, through 2 world wars, Rotary's been going. He said, the years ahead reserved for Rotary a most arduous task, to heal the wounds of a war-ravaged world, to change enemies into friends, to replace armed struggle with goodwill and international peace. This is the superhuman task we must undertake. Well, right now, that sounds like that could have been said yesterday, or today. You know, the world is, it's got armed struggles all over. We've got, you know, Rotary was helping us rise out of the ashes of World War II. And now, again, we have a superhuman task to replace armed struggle with goodwill and to build peace. This is what one of Rotary's primary objectives. In order to do that superhuman task, we need some super capabilities. We need to be able to be superheroes. Now, what is the first thing that a superhero dons to turn from an ordinary person into a superhero? What do they don?
Cape.
A cape, a cape. Any other answers?
Uniform.
And a uniform. Okay, so yes, that's exactly right. They don a cape and they don a new identity. Now, right now, when we're in a small identity, like take our little community here, when we identified ourselves as, you know, we're the Americans, they're the Mexicans, this and that, we're all separate identities. We didn't have superhuman powers, but when we got together with the local community and we began to identify ourselves as a whole and lift our community, suddenly we had the superhuman powers to actually transform a community in many ways. Education was just one, the way animals were respected, and many others. And we did this by becoming a community. As you travel through our local community, you'll see the Rotary signs, you'll see this sense of belonging and being a part of it. And we see that we do that within cities, when we take on the identity of we're all members of the city. When we're members of a country, we find ways to solve problems inside the community because we're a community and we're working together. We take on that identity of, you know, whether we're a Mexican or American or Ugandan or Nigerian, whatever it is, we take on that identity and we solve problems. We know how to solve problems within our group. Well, in order to solve these world problems, we're facing a terrible thing. There's not a single, almost no jurisdiction in the world are you allowed to murder people. In almost no jurisdiction are you allowed to rape and pillage. But suddenly at the global level, where we don't yet have an identity, where we have our separate identities, it's perfectly fine to go massively slaughter people, bomb people, kill people. And there is, in fact, even a law against it, the Kellogg-Briand Pact, but there's no system to enforce it because we're not a world community. So, if we want to become the superhumans who can take on that task, let me stop the screen share for a minute. Okay. One second. Stop sharing. Okay. So, if we want to take on that, now can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. If we want to take on that superhuman task of solving the problems that are risking the very extinction of our planet itself. I mean, right now, we're plagued with climate change and weather that is totally unprecedented. We're having risks that, in fact, and that's become one of Rotary's major focuses, is how to save our environment of this precious, beautiful planet. You know, I started out with boogie boarding, and every time I enjoy the beauty of this planet, I think, how can we preserve this precious blue marble we have, you know, floating in space in that blackness of, we send space probes way into the distance, and nowhere else do we find this beautiful oasis of life. We must preserve this, and we must preserve it from nuclear war. I mean, you know, leaders are rattling the sabers. They're threatening nuclear war. And that's because we're in a broken system where we're identifying as separate nations fighting each other. And we have to ward off the bad guys who are the outsiders. We have to protect those who are inside and make life better for them by fighting the bad guys on the outside. But the identity we need to be able to solve our world problems is to put on a new cape and a new identity. So here I'm going to don the necessary costume and the necessary identity for being able to take on that arduous superhuman task of saving our planet. And that is, oh, I put it on backwards. This is okay, well, I'll start with the backwards one, because the backwards one is very interesting, if you can see it. Let me show it. This one has "The World is My Country" in multiple languages all around the world, including Spanish and including others. El mundo es mi país. But now let me put it on the way that you can all see clearly the new identity, and that is our identity as da-da-da-da-da. Here it comes, the new identity that gives us superhuman powers. Drum roll. The new identity is world citizen. World citizen. By making that little shift in our minds, by clicking to from we're citizens of our separate country and we got to ward off and fight all the others, to that we are citizens of the world, suddenly become people that can solve problems around the world. And Rotary has demonstrated this amazingly well, because Rotary has never been confined to borders. You know, we do projects all over the world, helping people get clean water, wiping out polio, doing other things. I mean, we took a disease that was impossible to conquer, and we've virtually conquered it. And you know the amazing thing? Recently, they've been able to stop the fighting in some of the worst war zones temporarily while Rotarians went around and did polio shots. They were able to talk to participants. Let's just have a very temporary ceasefire just long enough for us to do polio shots. And the countries agreed. Rotary has that kind of power to actually stop wars. They pause wars. Now we need to stop wars. And we can do that when we take on this new identity of world citizens. Now, what does that mean to be a world citizen? The first thing it means is that clicking the change of thinking. But the second thing it means is that once we think of ourselves as world citizens, we begin to build the tools and institutions needed to do that. Now, Rotary has had an incredible history of being involved in this. Rotarians, after World War II, when here we'd had, you know, people burned in ovens and concentration camps, and over 50 million people killed in terrible slaughter, and the cities in ruins, and you know, just the devastation kind of things we're seeing in Ukraine, that was all over Europe. We're seeing this terrible challenges. And what did Rotarians do in the midst of it? Say, oh my God, things are terrible, this is just so awful, we're going to be, you know, things are going down the drain, there's just no hope. No, they didn't do that. They raised their thoughts above the divisions, and they joined together to help create the United Nations. Rotarians were key parts of creating the United Nations Charter and of creating the United Nations, which brought together the nations of the world with the stated purpose of ending the scourge of war. Well, the good news is that they got nations talking together instead of bombing and killing each other. As Eleanor Roosevelt said, it's better to have a forum where we can at least throw words at each other instead of throwing bombs. But has it ended the scourge of war? Not yet. And so, you know what we need to do for our superhuman task? We need to take the next step. The problem with the United Nations is it does not have enforceable world law. It does not have any way that they'll make an order that, okay, go to International Court of Justice. They'll say, okay, it's illegal to bomb this country. You got to stop it. But the nation says, oh, screw you. We don't have to follow you because we're the sovereigns. If each individual nation considers themselves the sovereigns, then there's no power to come together and have a law above the nations that divide us. So what we need to do is to put our thinking as world citizens to how do we create governance above the nations that divide us. Now, many people have been struggling for years to get the United Nations to reform itself to do that. Have been saying, there's an article right in the UN Charter that allows for, it calls for, and it hasn't happened, a review conference where we're supposed to be, the UN was supposed to be the first step, and then we're supposed to be evolving these tools and instruments of international law. Well, we have evolved tremendous global institutions that are serving people in so many ways, but we haven't yet created law above the nations that divide us. Now, what is law? Law is a compact between people. It's an agreement. It's an agreement that we agree to give up some of our sovereignty to a higher power so that we can all live better in our community. If we just said it's every person for themselves and I'll get all I can, we live in a dangerous, awful, wild, terrible light, but when we get together as we come with Rotary and join with others and build things, we can make things work. So the first thing is when we realize that the lawgivers are us. What does almost every constitution in the world start with? What are the words that start our constitution and most constitutions? What are
the people. We the people.
We the people. We the people. We the people of planet Earth declare a government of, by, and for the people of this world. Now, that's what a man I made a movie about called The World Is My Country. Bottom of the t-shirt here, The World Is My Country. You can watch it free online at our The World Is My Country site. Just click on the Rotary /Rotary, and you'll get a chance to watch it free this month. But what he said is that, you know, when we can rise, when we the people can create a way of governing above the nations that divide us, we can have the power to fix global warming, to solve all the seemingly impossible problems. Well, how do we do that? Well, it used to be that government had to be, you know, big buildings, powerful countries, militaries, and all that stuff. We have discovered, folks, that military power is an oxymoron. There's actually no such thing as military power. What do you mean there's no such thing as military power? Everybody knows there's military power. No, it doesn't exist. The most powerful empires in the world have tried to be tiny little countries and can't do it. You know, the French tried to defeat the Vietnamese in this jungle society, you know, for ages. They couldn't do it. Then the United States came in and we took over. We had the war in Vietnam, and we bombed and we pulverized people, and we had the most advanced technology. We had these, for instance, these very expensive airplanes that made a lot of money for the military contractors. There were people sniffers, and they'd go through the jungle where you know, people were hiding, and they tried to detect people so they could automatically bring in bombs that would kill them. What did the Vietnamese do to defeat it? They hung up buckets of urine. Then they went about their other way, walking up and down the path. The plane saw the buckets of urine, did all the bombing of the urine, and it killed lots of urine. But we also killed a lot of people. They called it collateral damage. Over 1 million people were killed in that war. And what happened? This powerful empire couldn't defeat them. Military power didn't work. Then look at Afghanistan. The powerful Soviet Empire tried to beat them for years and bombed them and pulverized them and did everything they could. And they couldn't beat them. Then we came in, and you know, for 20 years we bombed and pulverized them. We were supposed to be preserving the rights of women and all this other stuff. And what did? We forced them into having an even more disgusting government that was really oppressive of women. We made it worse. We had no power. All this military power and bombs was powerless. It had no power to achieve the objective we were trying to achieve. So what does actually give its power to change? It's learning the tools of conflict resolution, of discussion, of change. You know, we also we're also part of the production team of a film that's called Television Event. It's about how the movie The Day After helped the nation step back from nuclear war in 1983. And Ronald Reagan, in that movie, discovers, he watched that movie, it turned his thinking around. He went to meet with Gorbachev, and they negotiated the biggest arms reduction that's ever happened in the world. 70% of the nuclear arms were gotten rid of until military industrial complex got a little scared and tried to scare up some more money. But and now we're on that other path, building up more again. But you know, and then Ronald Reagan said, we discovered it's much better to be talking to each other than throwing bombs. And you know, there are many powerful conflict resolution techniques that Rotarians have been working on. There's Smart Settle, there's a whole range of groups, many of whom are part of our mega meeting team, you saw briefly in there, who are working on alternative dispute resolution, solving problems. Well, I think that if we put our minds to it, we are at the beginning of creating new tools for global governance. Take these Zoom meetings. I mean, you know, it used to be that if we wanted to have, in the horse and buggy days, if we wanted to have a government, you know, you had to send people, you know, galloping off in their horse carts or horses to Philadelphia or somewhere, and they had to vote, appoint representatives, and they had to vote for them, because there's no way you could have a meeting really of all the people. But now we can all meet in the global room. We're discovering we get on these Zooms, and we have people everywhere in the world talking together, and we can do it, and we become friends. I've got a very good friend, Oswam, who we're collaborating with on these mega meetings. You know, he's on the other side of the world. He's from Nigeria, together with him, we've been creating mega meetings where we bring the global leaders of Rotary together. We've had almost all the international presidents and others. I'll show you later how you get to the link on that. I'll share the screen, but let me do that at the end and tell you how you go there so you can listen to and join these mega meetings. But we've had over 1,000 Rotarians from all over the world listening together to our Rotary International presidents at a Zoom meeting and talking together and helping to make policies. Now, by rising above our national identities, Rotary has gone through a great deal of magic. But if we really put our minds to it, say we had a team of Rotarians that worked with some of these incredible advances in technology, to say we created an app, they have these Zoom apps you could have, they can add to Zoom. What if we had a Zoom app that was designed for conflict resolution? When you're having a meeting and then people start going at loggerheads, we could test it out with Rotary first. They're going at loggerheads, they're against each other. A little thing pops up, would you like some assistance in resolving this? And if people would, then it says, okay, so let's start with each side taking 1 minute to talk about, not about the thing they're disputing about. We have to break out of that. About who they are, what their vision is for the future. What would they like to see as the kind of future they'd like to see? And then have the other side. You start finding that there's a lot of conflicts. We all want a better life for our children. We all want peace. We all want to have adequate food, shelter, and water. We all want to do good. Everybody wants to do good. Did you realize that all these people killing each other around the world are trying to do good? The suicide bomber so wants to do good for inside his group that he's willing, or he or she is willing to die for it, willing to kill himself. And soldiers all over are willing to die and kill themselves to try to protect their family, their community. What if our community were the world, and that the only person to kill is the diseases and the threats to the environment that are destroying our world? Or to be ready in case an asteroid does come. We now have the technology to protect our planet as a whole. What if we can take our sites to that global level, and what if we can experiment with, Rotarians could do this. We could have a team, get a global grant, bring in some tech experts, and create an app we could add to Zoom that empowers us to become one, to break down the borders and divisions, and to be able to hear and listen to each other, and to be able to become a coherent group, became one. And then if you had these, in our movie, Gary Davis calls it syntegrity. They're synergy groups. The idea is not, the old kind of voting was, I have to vote for my side, I vote for my side, we all battle it out, we support candidates we don't even really believe in that much because he's better than the other bad guy, we got to stop the other bad guy, and so we're at odds with each other. But if we create a synergistic system of governance, the idea is not who's right, who's wrong, who's the bad guys, but we pick topics like, okay, we want safety for our kids. How do we create safety for our kids? And then you start talking about how do we do that, and we find amazing consensus. We can do it. Once we get past these borders and divisions, we create another topic. We'd love to be able to just have clean water that we can all jump in and swim in and then we can drink. We'd love to have diseases ended. All these things that we want to do, we could do much more powerfully if we create an app to do that. So there's so many possibilities for Rotary. I don't want to go on for too long, but I will share my screen and tell you a few places you can go where you can find out more. But actually, before I do that, let me throw it open to some questions and comments. Who has some comments, questions, or thoughts they'd like to share? Yes, Annette. Okay. Oswam, all right. Let's put Oswam on. Excellent. Okay. Very
Oh,
good.
that was your hand. I thought this hand was up, but that, you just moved the.
Oh,
cursor.
all right. Let me close participants here and see if anybody does have that. Does anybody have a hand up? Anybody out there who wants to ask a question in the Zoom audience there, please raise your hand. Anybody want to answer a question? Ask a question? Okay. All right. I don't see any questions there. Any in the room? If not, I'll go to the share screen. Oh yes. Go ahead.
You mentioned the MIC, the Military Industrial Complex.
Yes. Oh, hold on a moment. We have a question here in the room. Just wait a minute. I'll get to you next.
The powers that run the world are based in the MIC.
No, wait. I've got somebody in the room here talking. So hold on a minute, Michael. Okay. Do you want to come up to the mic and ask?
No, I don't.
No, all right. I'll repeat it. Go ahead.
I'm not, want to ask you. The real cabal, if you will, that runs our global community is more interested in not helping the world, but oppressing the world. And they control the economy, they control the military-industrial
Right.
complex.
Let me repeat that part, and I'll let you continue. So what our guest right here in the room is saying is that the military-industrial complex, there's a cabal kind of that's running our world that's not interested in our getting together. And go ahead, Zach.
And I think, if you polled the entire globe, 99% of the people would want a peaceful, wonderful world where we can all live.
99% of the people would want a peaceful, wonderful world where we all can live.
But that 1% is the percent that actually controls the actions.
But that 1% are the ones that actually control it.
So how do you overcome that with this? There is the balance of power is so skewed.
That balance of power is so skewed with that 1% having the power and us 99 not.
And I'm an idealist. I want to change the world too. But I've seen over my lifetime things progressively getting worse since the Eisenhower era. When I mentioned for the first time in public the MIC.
Right. So let me repeat that part. So I'm an idealist, he said, and I want to see the world work. But frankly, I've seen the world go the other direction. Back when Eisenhower gave his incredible farewell address, where he warned us all about the dangers of the military-industrial complex in every city and every community and every state house, and that we had to take back that power from them, but we didn't do it. And go ahead.
So that's 70 years ago, and we still haven't made it.
That was 70 years ago. We still haven't honored his warning.
So how is this going to change by a small number of people realizing that we need to make a difference, we need to become world citizens?
Okay, so how's that going to change if a small number of people realize we have to make a difference? Well, and have to become world citizens. Well, it does start. Every change in the world has started with a few individuals. And, one of the, so let me say, first of all, that the big answer is the reason why the 1% keep the rest of us divided, fighting against each other. When you look at it, you'll find that in many of the elections around the world, they've been pushing for hate. It doesn't matter who you hate. It doesn't matter if you hate black people or green people or people wearing clothes. As long as we can get people hating each other there, fighting each other, and hating people here, then that 1% stay in power. But, we were called to undertake a superhuman task. Who is the superpower? That 99%, folks, is the superpower. That's the superpower that can save our world. And they're trying to keep it contained because they're making some bucks on the edge. And they're not even bad people. They would probably love to have a world that worked. And if they can make some bucks making the world work, which they will, once that 99% can express their views. Almost every constitution says, as we mentioned, we the people created. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, passed unanimously by the UN, back in 1948, I believe it was, says that the will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. Well, what's the will of the people? Right now, with all these incredible apps and programs we have no way to measure the will of the people. It's astounding. Now, one of the previous Secretary Generals of the UN called for a global conversation on the UN, the future we want, and the institutions we need to create. And there was a great number of people involved in this global conversation of putting together, and we ended up with these strategic development goals, which are incredible documents. They're great statements of purpose. The people of the world have already spoken. You know, we do want, you know, clean air, safety, health, all the things that we love are in those declarations. But they're only declarations. They don't have power, and they don't have power only because we, the people, are locked in these boxes of our separate identities. Once we start identifying as world citizens, not just with a few people, but a massive number of people, we can have the power to change it. Now, how do we make it a massive number of people? Well, my personal vision, I'm a filmmaker that made some films. We have Martin Sheen introducing our film. We have, Leonardo DiCaprio. In our film, The World Is My Country, I said to Leonardo DiCaprio, he was having a press conference about the 11th hour, that humanity is facing the 11th hour of doom, and we need to turn that around. And, you know, and in this wonderful movie, Don't Look Up, you know, an asteroid is coming at humanity. They're going to destroy us all. And they were all carrying on as usual and not getting it together. And that 1%, you know, diverts us from stopping it, and the world blows up in that movie. Well, I shouldn't give away the ending, but anyway, that's spoiler alert. But anyway, Don't Look Up with Leonardo DiCaprio. So I said to Leonardo, I said, you know, I have a scientist friend who told me, look, it's too late. The world is doomed. There's no hope. You look at the current trends and you extend them, you know, we're doomed. And I said to him, well, you're a scientist and you extend current trends. But I'm a filmmaker, and I know that in every movie, just when things look darkest, when there's an avalanche and there's everything and all the things come at us and there's no hope, a hero arises who rises above the divisions and above the challenges and finally saves the world. I said to Leonardo, who is the hero who's going to save us? And he said, the hero is all of us. The hero is all of us. We are all that superhero. And he talked exactly about what we're talking about, how we have to raise our thinking above the nations that divide us. And he gave some beautiful speeches to the United Nations. Look him up. Look up Leonardo DiCaprio talking to the UN. So I think that one of the keys is for us to collaborate. There are many people in the motion picture industry who want a better world. But the best way they've been able to, usually to deal with it, is by showing disaster movies of all the things we don't want. You know, the day after tomorrow, another one about, you know, climate change disasters. And they're movies to warn us. But in addition to movies that warn us, we need movies to inspire us, movies to give us vision. We need to have kids week after week join, you know, have a new transmedia project with toys and games and video games and everything, where week after week young people can dwell in a world that works, in a world where we're solving the problems, we're cleaning it up, we're bringing back our environment, where we've ended wars, we're healing the wounds of war. They need to be able to dwell in that kind of future, in fiction first, and fiction helps break reality. When I started Future Wave, working for alternatives to violence through entertainment, I went to a video store, that was back when we had video stores, and I looked for videos about the future. And every single one of them, except one, was dismal, dark, apocalypse, after the apocalypse, whatever. The one exception was Star Trek. Star Trek, although some of them are violent, the original Gene Roddenberry vision was actually this group of basically, I would call them peace engineers, traveling around the universe, solving problems, dealing with subtleties, dealing with how do we bring together different communities. And that had an incredible impact. So many people, that fiction, most of the key scientists who started NASA say they were inspired to do what we did by watching Star Trek. It changed the real world. That fictional world changed the real world. Inventions that they made in their minds became reality. Because once people visualize those, once they play those games, then they can start creating that reality. So I think the key is for us to get together. You know, if I have the funding, and hopefully we'll get it by the right connections, maybe with Rotary, maybe we'll speak in Calgary, we'll come up with some people who will do it. If we can put together a key team that helps bring the vision of that future and helps bring Hollywood community, and they're ready for it, to jump in and help create something like this, we can create something that can inspire and visualize the kind of world we want. And you know, so many of us have discovered in our personal lives that if we visualize what we want, it's much more likely to happen. If you're visualizing, oh my God, the world's in trouble, we're gonna all fall apart and stuff like that, you're not very likely to solve things. If you visualize and can clearly picture the world you want, you're more likely to get there. And that's true as individuals and as a world.